Hello, everybody. What I wanted to talk about today was the band Sinister. If you're familiar with older death metal, you probably know of them. They've been around 30 plus years, and what I wanted to do today is compare a title track from their first record to a title track from their most recent record and point out the differences. Before we get into this, I think we can admit that there's a lot of bands that were from death metal's heyday that probably should have retired a long time ago, and I believe this is one of those cases. The older stuff, to me, I think is much more inspired, and what I'm hearing nowadays when I listen to modern Sinister could be any cookie cutter death metal band, and I think that's really a shame. But what I wanted to do was compare the first and most recent records, a song from each, find out what's exactly going on, and determine whether or not we're actually listening to the Sinister when we do so. So the first song we're going to do is Cross the Styx from the Cross the Styx record. If I'm going to reach for a Sinister record, it's probably going to be this one or Hate. Hate is a more refined record, but there's something about this one that keeps me coming back. This title track in particular is one of my favorites. I just like how off-kilter it feels to me. There's something about the dynamic of the rhythm section against the guitars that feels like it's just on the verge of collapsing, that I think actually lends to the aggression of what they're trying to do. And nowadays with every record being snapped to a grid, you're not going to get any of that. But granted, this is a band in its infancy. They have yet to refine what they're doing. There's going to be stuff going on in the songwriting, I can tell you right now, that I think is a handicap that they did overcome when we get into some of their more mid-period releases. But you could hear, at least in the beginning of this record, that they had a tonality and a spirit to them that didn't really sound like other bands at the time. This is 1992. Back then, if you heard a song from this record or Hate, you knew you were listening to Sinister, which is not the easiest task when you have that boom of death metal that was going on in that period. But let's take a listen to this. I'm going to break it down, probably riff by riff, talk about the arrangement, the transitions, the riffs themselves, and talk about what set them apart as a pretty special band for being like a B-tier death metal band in the early 90s. So let's talk about that first riff. What I like most about this riff is something you don't really hear in a lot of modern music, is that they double time the picking pattern throughout it. You hear this. There's a melody to this palm muted riff that's happening, and it's concrete. You can hum it, but at the same time, it has a foreign quality to it because the intervals and the notes that they're choosing are not very common, and it's still not very common if you compare it to bands you're hearing today. This type of melody is not something you hear very often, and it ends in what I think is like a tritone interval, which most death metal has some manipulation of that going on, and what they're doing underneath it to build atmosphere. And yeah, you can have atmosphere in death metal; it's hard to do, but by letting that I think it's a D, by letting that low D ring over that pattern, you're giving yourself an atmosphere, a backdrop to the song. You're setting the stage of what's to come. And this isn't just an intro theme that you're going to hear once and have it be forgotten, but they're going to elaborate on it later in what I think is a pretty creative way. And that's another thing that you don't get out of a lot of modern artists. They might throw an idea at you at the beginning of the song to try to rope you in, but as soon as you're there, they'll go on to an unrelated tangent, and then you'll never hear that again, and you won't remember how the song started by the time it ends. And I will admit, going into this next part, it really does, to me, need a bit of a better transition. One of the things that I have said in previous videos that I don't like is when a band stops everything they're doing and then goes into the next part. It's a cheap way to connect pieces together, in that you're not really connecting pieces together. And they do that, I think, twice in this song. And the only way you can really get away with that is if the mood of your song doesn't change when it happens. And they managed to do that in this song. So it's not a great tactic, but it's slightly more forgivable than what you'll hear in a modern band, like, say, the Blood Incantation video I did, where they had a passage that was in no way related to the next passage of their song, but they still stopped everything to get there. So we're going to go from this riff to the next, and you'll notice that as we get into the second riff, they've taken the aggression of the song up a notch, but not to the point where it's like come off the rails. You're not getting to like a frenzied blast beat section. You're going to get to like more of a mid-paced groove, which is an organic shift in mood from this first riff that is just setting the stage for the song. So one of the things that's very sinister about that, not sinister in, like, as an adjective, but as pertaining to this band and this band only, a lot of the chords you're hearing in that barrage of palm muting, there's a lot of what I think are thirds. You wouldn't, like, a lot of bands that were playing in this time were going to be using power chords, you know, your fifth as your most dominant part of your riff. You know, it's a strong interval. It comprises most of the metal that we know and love. They're choosing to use different types of chord shapes and it's one of those if you blink you miss it type of things, because it's underneath all of that palm muting. But it's there, and it provides a sense of melody that's unique to this band, or it was at the time. And it's something that really kind of gives you a platter of what Sinister has to offer. And I think, you know, just we're two riffs into the song and you're already getting a tonal backdrop that is very unique to just this band. So it's a good way to get your individual characteristics to shine just two riffs into your song. And they stopped ending it with the 3-note palm muted chug, or I think it's 4, and then they continued the rolling palm muting straight through to kind of build on the aggression while still having it be the same riff. And then there's like a kind of like a solo guitar melody over it. So they're not abandoning their theme; they're developing on it. Something that I think a lot of modern bands just don't do enough of. So this is definitely a riff that scales back to allow the vocals to take center stage. And in good death metal, that's not something you always want to have happen. You know, death metal is guitar-based music. If you end up having this happen where you oversimplify your songs to let the vocals take center stage, you usually end up sacrificing what makes metal important. But what they are doing to keep this in spirit with the rest of the song is that they're continuing with that kind of palm muting pattern where it starts with, you know, your typical 16th note runs, and then the second half of it doubles that. So they're still showing you the mirror of the aggression that they brought into the first riff of the song, but now they're scaling it back enough to let vocals be present. If you had vocals over that first riff, it might get a little muddied when you're trying to first introduce a theme in your song. So this is a bit of a departure from what death metal kind of is, but at the same time, it is done in a more tasteful way to give the song a little bit more structure that it kind of needs at this point in the song. You kind of want to peel back a little bit of the layers because they are going to take us through a more elaborate journey later. So they increased they double timed the picking for the entirety of the riff then to bring up the aggression level a little bit more, and then they're getting back to that second riff of the song, that kind of groove-based riff. So they are cognizant of their composition. They haven't introduced a barrage of themes to kind of bewilder the listener, but they're still concentrating more on mood and attitude and allowing the song to naturally breathe instead of just kind of suffocating it with a bunch of ideas that don't sync up. So once again, you have that everything stops type of transition, which I definitely do not like. I do wish they would have pieced this together better. In fact, if you could like mentally place those riffs side by side, it wouldn't be a tremendous departure from the arrangement to the point where it would feel derailed. By doing what they did there and having like that backwards vocal effect be the transition, it's more gimmicky than it is clever. It doesn't take me out of the song because the next riff they go into still feels like it belongs melodically to the song, and it's more mid-paced than what they had given you before. And what's unique about this next groove is that a lot of those chords that they're hitting under it are on upbeats, and it has an atypical count. So it still sounds unique. It's still like the band has not abandoned the tone of the song. It still feels like all the parts belong in the song. So the arrangement is not bad, but it just definitely needs a little bit of transitional help. I still think that this next part is well thought out, and I think it lends to the next parts pretty well. Now, I absolutely love what's going on here. So they brought back that first theme of the song, had it be one guitar by itself. You'll notice that the end of the riff, the tail end of the riff, is no longer the same, and they've elaborated on the theme. And then the two guitars do it together, and then the rhythm comes back in to like a frenzied blast beat here. This is how you build a proper climax in a song. You take a theme that the audience is familiar with, you develop that theme through the riffs that are surrounding it, and then you bring it back in a new way with a new level of aggression to it. So this feels alarming in a great way. It doesn't take me off guard. It feels like I naturally should have arrived there, and it does it in a really well thought out way. So that next riff takes the tail end of the riff you just heard. So they're scaling back on some of that palm-muted melody that was the first riff of the song, bringing in more of like a basic rhythm, basic melody, and still utilizing the tail that you just heard of the riff before. So they're tying it together. They're giving you similar themes but developing them. Once more, this is a successful musical trope. So that has the similar rhythm that you heard for the second riff of the song, but it's an entirely different melody. Once again, they're keeping you within the confines of the song that they have already developed. They're not taking you completely off guard. They're giving you familiar themes, but they're developing them. So they scaled it back even further, gave you a next passage that's mainly just kind of staccato, palm muted type of rhythmic stuff, but the end of it has that same tritone tail that the first riff of the song has. So once again, they're sticking to the themes that they've already outlined in the song, and by either developing them with more details or by scaling it back like this, you're allowing different colors of the same theme to shine through. So it really takes you through a journey of a limited amount of passages, but it allows those passages to breathe in new ways when they elaborate on them in the song. Once again, that stop everything type of transition, then go into a differing tempo. Not my favorite kind of transition, but at least they didn't go into an unrelated part. They brought back a similar theme from before in the song. The part that is kind of an elaboration on the second riff has returned now, but now it's scaled back where there's no vocals, which allows for the space of a guitar solo to take in. So not the greatest transition, still not taking me out of the experience. So I really enjoy how they decided to end that song. The way that they decided to bring back in that frenzied palm mute section and tie it into the chorus of the song while still allowing the first riff of the song to return. They definitely brought in a sense of finality to it, tied everything together in a good way. So that's why that song I think is very successful to me. I come back to it a lot. I really do enjoy the melody to it. And I think that for a first record, they've done a great job at presenting their overall character and giving you what is a very grounded composition that does need a little bit of transitional help, but still showcases that they have good songwriting skill for a band that was so young at the time. So what I want to do now is look at the title track from their most recent record, see how it differs, see if it is successful in any way, and we'll talk about what the band represents now based from it. So this next song is the self-titled track from the Syncretism record, which is their most recent output. So if you're familiar with old school death metal, you should know right away that this is no longer Sinister. This is now Suffocation. You can definitely hear in that picking pattern and the melody choice that they've done that they've kind of abandoned a lot of the interval choice that made them more of a special band from the early 90s, and now they're going with a more straightforward approach to death metal using the tonality that everyone is more familiar with. So this right now could be any number of Suffocation influenced bands. This doesn't sound like Sinister at all to me. The first couple of riffs at least did flow together well. They introduced a theme for, I think, just one phrase that they're going to be utilizing later, which I do like when bands foreshadow their themes. It showcases that you do care about your song arrangement. But altogether, this is disappointing to me as an older Sinister fan to hear what to me is pretty generic death metal. I mean, those vocals to me even sound like Frank from Suffocation. And okay, so you got your title track. Chances are you want to make your title track pretty special. So if you're going to have the verse riff of your title track kind of wow the crowd, I would think that you wouldn't choose such like a, I don't know, boneheaded, simple death metal riff. This to me is like an opening band riff. This is a, you get to a show, you're excited to see the band that you're there for, and then some shithouse band from your podunk town shows up and plays some ass fucking riffs like this, and you just want to get to the bar and drink away your misery until the band you're there to see comes on stage. A band with a 30-year record like Sinister, if they bring a riff like this to the table, they should fucking leave the hall. Like that's kind of inexcusable, but we're going to talk about why that happened, why they're using riffs like this, probably more towards the end of the song. So this is more like the cookie cutter slam bands that Suffocation influenced that didn't understand what made Suffocation special and kind of gleaned from the superficial aspects of their more slammy riffs. Once again, this is a D-tier type of shitty death metal riff that any band you could pick out of a hat can do. This is not Sinister. So they did bring back that melody that they teased from the beginning. That's good. Shows some of the compositional awareness that Sinister had in that previous song I showed you. They have like a symphonic adornment over the top to provide a little bit of an atmospheric backdrop. Don't really care about how that affects the song either way. I'm more interested in the arrangement and the melody that they're going to bring to the table to see if it actually resembles what the band is, or what it should be if you're going to be calling yourself Sinister. Shit. So they got this kind of Dimmu Borgir thing going on that really is outstaying its welcome for me. And I don't mind that they brought the song down in aggression or allowing a groove to take center stage, but this has gone on far too long and has not elaborated enough where it should make up the crux of the arrangement so far. Okay, so after a couple of years, they decided to end that phrase. And if you're gonna play something to death like that, at least take me somewhere new with your arrangement. Instead, they're taking us back to that fucking opening band verse riff, which sucks balls and is really sad. Makes me sad. So we're gonna keep listening and see at least if they're gonna bring this song, riff back in, if it's gonna go somewhere cool. So this is that slam riff that we talked about earlier that now has a kind of solo over it. And I will say that this solo is kind of the first time that it sounds a little bit like Sinister to me. If you listen to the first real song on Cross the Styx, they have a part of the song that they repeat, and it's a slower groove that they put a higher guitar like solo type of break over it, and it really fills it out. The solo they're doing over the top of this isn't about being flashy. It's about having kind of an alien-sounding melody, and I think it is successful in that regard. So they've developed a riff that I previously didn't really care for, and gave it a little bit more importance in the arrangement. So this is that theme that they teased in the beginning of the song and then brought back later on. They're doing it again, and now they're bringing back some of that atmospheric symphonic stuff over it, but it sounds more discordant. So they are paying some attention to their composition here. Not a terrible idea, and I think that if they want to bring the song to a close on a down note, this is a non-offensive way to do so. first riff of the song and they play it like 3-4 times. Please, God. All right, so let's talk about this masquerading as Sinister. There's a reason why this sounds like any other mid or like C-tier death metal band. It's because it's no longer Sinister. If you look at the lineup, the band has had so many lineup changes, and it's gotten to the point where the only familiar face in the band that's been with the band the whole time is the drummer, who is now the vocalist, and the second most recent, or the second oldest member of the band is the drummer that took over for him on drums in like 2011. Since then, they've had so many member shifts. I don't know who's writing the music in the band. If it is the vocalist, once drummer, Odd, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. If he is the main, sorry, my dog is a bit protective. If it is him, then I will say that the band has a reason to continue, but I find it really hard to believe that he's the main composer throughout all of this material. If it is any of the other members of the band have only been in the band for a few years, and to my ears, this band has not sounded like Sinister since, I don't know, maybe 2010 or so. This, to me, could be any other band. There's only one band I could think of that has had tons of member changes and still managed to keep their sound. And it's another case like this where it was the drummer that stayed in the band, but still managed to have the same tonality and spirit of the band, and that's Iniquity from Denmark. There's plenty of other bands where the drummer's been the only mainstay and had a billion lineup changes, and every record sounds different, where it's not the same band. Cryptopsy is not Cryptopsy. Who else? I know that there's other examples. Monstrosity is not Monstrosity. It's just Lee Harrison and whoever else he decides to get in the band. These are the type of situations where you just got to call your band something else. You know, I think that the true spirit of what Sinister is in, I don't know if Howitzer is still a band. I never really cared for their material, but that probably has more in common with Sinister than whatever this does rather. What I will say is there are things about this song that have a little bit more compositional awareness than Cross the Styx did. As far as the natural flow of the song and the transitions in between parts, this song is a little bit more successful at not derailing when they want to introduce new themes, at the expense of having a unique sense of melody and having individual character for the piece of music itself. This may be a more compositionally solid song, but it in no way is anything I'd want to listen to more than once. It's one of those things where it doesn't, I might like Cross the Styx more, but it doesn't matter what I like. Is this a better song based on its compositional merit? Maybe. But, I have gotten into arguments in some of the threads on my other videos, and I will admit that what I like is not the focus of what I'm trying to show here. This might be a more compositionally solid song, but only slightly so, and at the same time, it is no longer Sinister. What I would have liked to have seen is to have some of those compositional strengths develop as a band has a 30-year career like they've had, but still have it resemble the original band. If you're going to go ahead and change everything that makes you what you are, just call it something else, or hang it up. I don't know if Ad needs that fucking sweet Sinister money. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's driving him to do it. But this band hasn't sounded like Sinister since he's had his wife in the band, which was still not great material. I will listen to Sinister up through probably Aggressive Measures, which I don't hate. A lot of people hate that record, but at least it sounds like Sinister. You'll hear the songs on that, you'll hear the riffs on that, you'll know it's Sinister. This, I guarantee you, if I just played this and didn't tell a room full of metalheads who it was, they would have no idea. And if you're going to be a band for 30 plus years, you really gotta bring that to the table. Bring your identity to the table. Otherwise, there is just no reason for you to exist. And that's the problem I have with the band today. And I would like to hear with their next release if they could capture some of that spirit from the first few records. Not even first, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 records. Just give me Sinister. That's what I want. That's what everybody that listens to this band should want. Let's see if they can get there. My outlook on that is bleak, as it is usually. But if they do bring out a new album, I'll analyze that for this channel, and I'll see if they have allowed some of those strengths that they used to have and some of the strengths that they're developing here to take center stage. So look out for that. In the meantime, thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you again soon.